You don't have time to garden. You barely have time for the things you actually enjoy. And every May you walk past the garden center and you feel a small, specific kind of guilt. Because you know your yard could look better. You just don't have a free Saturday to make it happen. What if I told you that one weekend, just one, gets you a yard that takes care of itself for the next 10 years? No watering schedules, no deadheading every weekend, no replanting every single spring, no expensive mulch budget, no standing in line at the nursery in June while your kids melt down in the parking lot. 11 perennials. Plant them once. They come back every year on their own. They spread without your help. They bloom whether you remember them or not. Some of them literally cannot be killed. Others go to sleep when it gets hot. So you don't have to think about them through the entire summer. By the time we get to plant number 7, you are going to realize something. The difference between a yard that looks beautiful and a yard that looks forgotten is not time. It is not money. It is not effort. It is choosing the right 11 plants on one specific Saturday this month. Let's get into it. Plant 1, Hostas. You have that one spot, under a tree on the north side of the house, against a fence where the sun barely makes it through. Every single plant you have ever tried in that spot has either died slowly or limped through one sad season and given up. You have spent money on that corner 3 times. You have nothing to show for it. Hostas end that problem permanently. Hosta is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 8. That covers nearly every gardening region in the continental United States. The leaves come in everything from deep forest green to bright chartreuse, from blue-green to creamy variegated white, from textured ribbed surfaces to glossy heart-shaped pads the size of dinner plates. They are the kings of low-maintenance shade. Once established, they form lush, leafy mounds that crowd out weeds completely. No mulching that bed, no pulling weeds in July. The plant does that work for you. Here is what most gardening videos never tell you about hostas. They are almost impossible to kill. You can dig one up, leave the divided clump on a driveway for 2 weeks, plant it back into the ground, and it will recover and bloom that same season. Garden centers do not advertise that fact, because if you knew it, you would never buy more than one. And that is exactly what makes hostas one of the highest return investments on this entire list. One mature hosta clump, after 3 or 4 years in the ground, divides into 8 to 12 viable plants in a single morning. At nursery prices, that is anywhere from $60 to $150 worth of new plants from one shovel and 30 minutes of your time. You should never buy a hosta twice. One warning. Slugs love hostas, and so do deer. If you have a serious deer problem in your area, choose thicker-leaved blue varieties like Halcyon or Big Daddy. Their waxy texture is far less appetizing than the soft green types. Plant them in part shade to full shade in soil that holds some moisture. Water them through the first season, then walk away. They will be there long after you have moved out of the house. Plant 2, Sedum Autumn Joy. If you have ever killed a plant by forgetting to water it, this is the plant that forgives you. Permanently. Sedum. Autumn Joy is, by every honest measure, the single most indestructible perennial available to American gardeners right now. Sedum spectabile, the Autumn Joy variety, is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9. The leaves are fleshy, succulent, and water-storing, which is exactly why this plant treats drought as a mild inconvenience instead of an emergency. It does not flop. It does not wilt dramatically. It does not need rescuing. It just keeps going. In late summer, just when most of your garden is exhausted, brown around the edges, and clearly ready for fall, Autumn Joy explodes into massive flat-topped flower heads that start out pale pink, deepen into rose, and finally rust to a rich copper bronze. And here is the part that makes it genuinely exceptional. Those dried flower heads stay standing through the entire winter. Snow lands on them, frost coats them. They look architectural and deliberate and beautiful in January when the rest of your yard is empty. Most perennials disappear after their show. Autumn Joy gives you a 4-season plant in a single planting decision. Bees and butterflies cover it in September and October. Late-season pollinators are running out of food sources by then, and Autumn Joy is one of the most reliable nectar stops still operating that late in the year. You are feeding the local ecosystem when almost nothing else is. That is not a small thing, planted in full sun in any soil. The worse the soil, the better it performs. Rich, amended soil makes it floppy and weak. A lean, dry soil makes it stand up tall and bloom harder. This is one of the very few plants in American gardening where neglect is genuinely the correct strategy. Divide it every 3 to 4 years in early spring, and one plant becomes 6. You will run out of yard before you run out of free Autumn Joy. 2 plants in, and I want you to be honest with me in the comments below. How many plants have you killed in the last 3 years because you did not have time to babysit them? If you have ever felt embarrassed walking past your own front yard, you are not alone. Almost every gardener I talk to has been there. Drop the number below. Tell me what state you are in. I read every single comment, and the answers genuinely shape what videos I make next. Plant 3, Daylilies. There is a reason you see daylilies in parking lots, in highway medians, and in the front beds of every gas station from Maine to California. They survive what nothing else will: heat, drought, poor soil, neglect, foot traffic, and outright abuse. They handle all of it, and they bloom anyway. Heuchera, the daylily, is hardy in USDA zones 1 through 11, the entire country. There is almost no yard in America where this plant will not thrive without you doing a single thing. The color range is frankly ridiculous. Over 80,000 registered cultivars exist. Burgundy, peach, lemon yellow, cream, deep purple, bright orange, vivid red, bicolors that look painted. When you plant a mix of early, mid, and late blooming varieties together, you get a continuous wave of color from early summer through mid-fall. 4 full months of flowers, all of it on autopilot. And here is the math that changes everything. Every 4 to 5 years, you divide one daylily clump and you get 10 to 15 complete viable new plants. At $10 a pot at any garden center, one original daylily eventually produces over $100 worth of free, blooming, ready-to-plant gifts. That is not gardening, that is investing. Mass-planted daylilies shade the ground beneath them so completely that weeds physically cannot establish underneath them. That bare, weedy strip along your driveway, the one you have been losing to crabgrass for 3 summers running, is solved with one Saturday of planting daylilies along its edge. One important warning that most channels never bother to mention. Daylilies are acutely toxic to cats. Every part of the plant, including the pollen, can cause kidney failure if a cat eats it. If your cats spend time outdoors in your garden, plant something else. For dog owners, generally safe. Plant daylilies in full sun to part shade in any soil that drains. Water once a week through the first month. After that, the plant is on its own, and it will be fine. Plant 4, Coneflower, Echinacea. Native plants outperform every imported alternative in their home country, and coneflower is the perfect example of why. It evolved on this continent. It belongs in American soil. It thrives in conditions that kill imported ornamentals within one season. Echinacea purpurea is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 8. The classic variety produces large daisy-like flowers with deep purple-pink petals radiating out from a prominent dark orange cone center. Modern cultivars expand that palette dramatically into vivid orange, bright yellow, a white, salmon, and even green-tinted varieties. The flower is large, the stems are sturdy, and the bloom period runs from June straight through September. Coneflower is heat tolerant in a way that very few other flowering perennials genuinely are. While your hostas and your hydrangeas are wilting in the August heat, coneflower is standing up tall and continuing to push out new buds. You do not need to deadhead it to keep it healthy. It will bloom whether you cut spent flowers or not, although doing so does encourage more flushes. For the no-time gardener, just leaving it alone is a perfectly acceptable strategy. The plant performs either way, and here is a benefit that almost no one talks about. The seed heads that form after the flowers fade are critical winter food for goldfinches, chickadees, and sparrows. Resist the urge to cut them down in your fall cleanup. Leave them standing. Goldfinches will come into your yard all winter to eat from them, and you will get to watch that from your kitchen window in January for absolutely free. Pollinators love coneflower. Bees work it constantly. Butterflies, including monarchs and swallowtails, visit it regularly. One small clump of Echinacea supports more wildlife in a single summer than half the trees in most suburban yards. Planted in full sun in average to poor soil. Avoid rich amended soil, which makes coneflower floppy. Divide every 4 years. One plant becomes 5, just like that. Plant 5, Catmint, Walker's Low. If you have ever bought a lavender plant, watched it die a slow, miserable death over the course of one season, and quietly given up on the idea of having that classic dreamy purple haze in your garden, you need to hear this. Catmint gives you the entire lavender look without a single one of the lavender problems. Nepeta racemosa, Walker's Low, is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 8. It produces clouds of soft lavender blue flowers above silvery gray-green aromatic foliage from late spring all the way through early autumn, 4 full months of color. The mounding habit is elegant and natural. It cascades over pathway edges, softens the front of borders, and pairs effortlessly with roses, ornamental grasses, coneflowers, and almost anything you place near it. Professional landscape designers reach for catmint constantly. There is a reason for that. Lavender demands perfect drainage, lean alkaline soil, dry summers, and zero humidity. If even one of those conditions is wrong, lavender dies. Catmint asks for none of that. It thrives in average soil, average rainfall, and average yards. It does not care about humidity. It does not care about your local pH. It just performs. Deer evaluate plants almost entirely by scent before they ever try to eat them. Catmint's aromatic oils are strong enough to repel deer at the approach stage before contact. The plant is the repellent. Always on, never washing off, never needing reapplication. If deer have eaten 3 of your previous plantings down to the dirt, this is the plant you put in next. After the first big bloom flush ends in early summer, cut catmint back by half. Wait 3 weeks. It comes back denser, fuller, and produces a complete second wave of flowers that carries through to September. 2 full bloom seasons from one plant in 1 year with a 30-second haircut as the only labor. That is the kind of return on investment that defines this entire list. 5 plants in, and if you have already learned something here that your yard genuinely needed, do me one favor before plant number 6. Subscribe right now. Not at the end. Now. Because here is what I have learned about gardeners who subscribe in the middle of a video. They are the ones who actually plant something. They are the ones whose yards look completely different next May. Be that gardener. Hit the subscribe button below right now. Plant 6. Peonies. Peonies are the closest thing American gardening has to a permanent investment. A peony bush, planted correctly one time, will live for 50 years or more. Some varieties have been documented blooming on the same root system for over 100 years. You are not just planting a flower. You are planting an heirloom that your grandchildren will inherit. Paeonia lactiflora is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 8. The flowers are enormous, dramatic, and deeply fragrant. Soft pink, pure white, deep red, coral, and creamy yellow. A single mature peony bush can produce 30 to 50 flowers in a single bloom flush. The bloom window is short, only 2 to 3 weeks in late spring, but the impact during that window is unmatched by anything else on this list. And here is what almost no one mentions about peonies. After the flowers fade, The foliage stays a deep glossy green all summer long. The bush itself, even without flowers, functions as a clean structured shrub-sized presence in your border. It looks intentional and considered for the entire season, not just the bloom period. Most short bloom plants leave a gap when they finish. Peony fills its own gap with handsome foliage that asks nothing from you. The trick to peonies, the one detail that separates a lifetime of blooms from a lifetime of disappointment, is planting depth. The eyes, the small pink growth points on the root crown, must sit no more than 2 inches below the soil surface. Plant them deeper than that, and the plant will grow leaves but never flower. Ever. 2 inches. That is it. Nail that one detail at planting, and the plant blooms reliably every May for the next half-century. Peonies are deer-resistant, drought-tolerant once established, and require almost no maintenance ever. A no fertilizer beyond a handful of compost in early spring. No special pruning, no replanting, just yearly bloom, in May, on schedule, for the rest of your life. If you only plant one thing on this list, plant a peony. It will outlive everything else in your yard, including possibly the house itself. Plant 7 Black-Eyed Susans. This is the one I told you would change everything. Pay close attention. Black-Eyed Susan grows wild along American roadsides from Maine to Texas. You have driven past it every single summer of your entire life. And meanwhile, gardeners walk into nurseries every May and pay $9 a pot for something nature has been growing for free along every highway in this country for hundreds of years. That ends right now. Rudbeckia fulgida goldsturm is hardy in USDA, zones 3 through 9. Vivid golden yellow petals radiating outward from a deep chocolate black center cone. The contrast is electric. Catalog photos do not do it justice. You have to see it in your own garden, catching late afternoon August light, to fully understand why people physically slowed down in their cars to look at it. And here is the part that makes Black-Eyed Susan exceptional for the no-time gardener specifically. It blooms from July all the way through October. Right when most summer gardens are starting to look exhausted, brown around the edges, and finished, goldsturm is just hitting its peak. When your neighbors' yards have given up by mid-August, yours is just getting started. That is a 4-month bloom window from a plant that asks nothing from you in return. It spreads 2 ways simultaneously. Underground rhizomes push outward each year, expanding the colony quietly without your involvement. The seed heads drop seeds that germinate the following spring into entirely new plants. You plant one in May. By year 2, the clump is visibly larger. By year 3, you have a sweeping naturalized colony that you never watered, never fertilized, never touched. Leave the seed heads standing through fall and winter. Goldfinches will eat from them October through February. Your yard becomes a free wildlife sanctuary, while your neighbors are paying $20 a month on birdseed. As a North American native, goldsturm needs less water, less fertilizer, and less attention than nearly any imported alternative you can buy. It belongs in American soil. Plant it once, and it will reward you for decades. Tell me something honestly in the comments. How many of these 7 plants have you tried to grow before, and what happened? I am genuinely curious whether your previous experiences match what I am describing here, or whether something went wrong that we should troubleshoot together. Drop your story below. The comment section on this channel has become one of the most useful gardening communities on YouTube, and your honest answer makes it better. Plant 8, Bleeding Heart. This is the perfect plant for the gardener who does not want to think about their garden during the hottest, busiest part of the summer. Bleeding Heart literally goes to sleep in July, disappears underground. You do not water it, you do not deadhead it, you do not even see it. And then next April it comes back exactly where it was, blooming all over again. Dicentra spectabilis. The old-fashioned Bleeding Heart is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9. The flowers are unmistakable. Heart-shaped pendants, pink with a tiny white drop hanging in a graceful row from arching stems that lean over the foliage like a string of lanterns. There is nothing else in American gardening that looks like a mature bleeding heart in full bloom. It looks hand-drawn. It looks almost imaginary. It blooms from late April through early June, exactly when shade gardens need their show. After the bloom finishes, the foliage starts to yellow and decline. By July, in most regions, the entire plant has gone fully dormant, retreating completely back into the root system. The space it occupies essentially disappears from your garden until the following spring. For a busy gardener with a packed summer schedule, that is not a flaw. That is an enormous feature. The plant is asking you to ignore it. Pair bleeding heart with hostas, ferns, or coral bells. As the bleeding heart fades in early summer, the foliage of those neighboring plants fills the gap so completely that no one will ever notice the bleeding heart is gone. By the time you remember it, it is already coming back the next April. That is the most no-effort, no attention, no maintenance plant rotation pattern in shade gardening. Plant it in part shade to full shade in soil with consistent moisture. It is one of the few plants on this list that genuinely prefers a richer soil. Compost worked into the planting hole at installation gives the root crown what it needs to perform for the next 20 years. After that, walk away. Plant 9. Coral bells. Heuchera. This is the plant you grow specifically because you do not have time to chase blooms all summer long. The flowers on coral bells are real, and they are pretty, and pollinators do appreciate them. But the actual point of this plant, the reason gardeners obsess over it, is the foliage. And the foliage works whether you ever pay attention to it or not. Heuchera is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9. The leaf colors available now in modern cultivars are genuinely staggering. Lime green, deep burgundy purple, silvery pewter, caramel orange, almost black eggplant. Variegated combinations with veining and edging that look painted. Coral bells stays low to the ground in a tidy mounding rosette, and that mound holds its color and shape for the entire growing season without you doing anything to it. Here is what makes coral bells perfect for the no-time gardener specifically. The plant requires almost no pruning, no deadheading, no staking, no dividing for the first 3 or 4 years. The slim, wiry flower stalks rise above the foliage in late spring with tiny bell-shaped flowers in white, pink, or coral. Pollinators visit. The flowers fade. You can cut the stalks back if you want a cleaner look, or leave them, and the plant continues to perform regardless. Use coral bells as a continuous color edge along the front of any border or pathway. Run a ribbon of dark purple Heuchera in front of bright green hostas, and the contrast carries the entire bed visually for the full growing season without a single bloom doing the work. That is the secret most landscape designers will not tell you. Foliage carries gardens, not flowers. Coral bells lets you build that effect with one Saturday of planting. Plant in part shade to full shade in well-draining soil. Avoid heavy wet clay, which rots the crown over winter. In zone 6 and warmer, the foliage stays semi-evergreen through winter, giving you ground-level color in February when the rest of your yard is gray. Divide every 4 years to keep the plants vigorous. Each division is a free, fully grown, ready-to-plant new specimen. Plant 10, Salvia. Salvia is a member of the mint family, and like everything in that family, it carries strong aromatic oils through every part of the plant. Those oils are exactly why deer walk past it without even slowing down. They are exactly why drought does not faze it. They are exactly why this plant outperforms its size in nearly every American garden where it is planted. Salvia nemorosa, the most reliable hardy garden salvia, is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 8. Vertical spikes of deep purple, blue-violet, or pink flowers rise 18 to 24 inches above neat mounding foliage from late spring straight through midsummer. The vertical structure is its real value in design. Most perennials grow in mounds or clumps, which means a flat garden bed full of mounded plants ends up looking visually flat. Salvia breaks that flatness with strong upward structure that carries the eye and gives the bed actual architecture. Cut salvia back by half immediately after the first bloom, flush ends in midsummer. Within 2 to 3 weeks, it sends up a second wave of flowers that carries through to September. 2 full bloom periods, deer-resistant foliage, drought tolerance, and structural value are all from one plant. Caradonna is one of the most reliable cultivars, with nearly black flower stems that make the purple flowers look even more saturated. May Night, an older variety, was named Perennial of the Year by the Perennial Plant Association for very good reasons. Either choice performs beautifully. And here is the pollinator story that most gardeners do not realize. Salvia is one of the highest value early summer nectar sources for native bees specifically. Not honeybees, native bees, the smaller and far more efficient pollinators that actually drive most of the fruit and vegetable production in North American agriculture. Plant salvia, and you are directly supporting your own future tomato harvest, your own apple tree, your own raspberry yield. The plant pays for itself in ways most gardeners never connect. A plant in full sun in average to lean soil. Avoid rich amended soil, which makes salvia weak and floppy. The poorer the dirt, the better the bloom. That is one of the consistent themes of the no-time perennial garden, and salvia proves it again. 10 plants in, and I want to acknowledge something. If you have made it this far, you are not casually scrolling. You are seriously planning a yard that is going to look completely different next May. That tells me everything I need to know about you. The gardeners who watch this channel all the way through are the ones whose yards genuinely transform within one season. Subscribe right now if you have not already. Hit the bell so the next video, which goes even deeper, actually finds you when it drops. Plant 11, Hellebores, also called Lenten Rose. Every plant on this list earns its place during the spring, summer, or fall growing season. This one earns its place in February. When everything else is dormant, when there is still snow on the ground in many regions, when nothing else in your garden is doing anything at all, Hellebores are blooming. Hellebores orientalis is hardy in USD A zones 4 through 9. The flowers are subtle but stunning. Cup-shaped nodding blooms in soft white, pale pink, deep burgundy, slate purple, and mottled speckled combinations that look almost watercolored. The bloom period runs from late winter, in some climates as early as January, all the way through mid-spring. That is 2 to 3 months of color from a plant that is performing while every other perennial in your yard is still asleep. And here is the part that genuinely surprises gardeners who have never grown hellebores before. The leaves are leathery, deeply lobed, and evergreen. They look good 12 months a year. Snow falls on them. They keep their shape. Frost coats them. They keep their color. In a winter shade garden, hellebores are not just the only thing blooming, they are the only thing that still looks alive at all. That is rare and genuinely valuable. Hellebores are deer-resistant, rabbit-resistant, and drought-tolerant once established. They are also long-lived. A mature hellebore clump can perform reliably in the same spot for 20 years or more without dividing, without replanting, without any major intervention. They self-seed gently, and the seedlings produce subtle color variations from the parent plant, which means a small initial planting slowly develops into a naturalized patch with genuine character and surprises. Plant hellebores in part shade to full shade in well-draining soil enriched with compost at installation. Cut back the old foliage in late winter, just before the new flower stalks emerge. That single annual cut, taking less than 10 minutes for several plants, is essentially the entire annual maintenance requirement. After that, the plant takes care of itself for the next 2 decades. And when you walk out into your yard on a cold February morning, coffee in hand, breath fogging in the air, and you see that one cluster of soft pink hellebore blooms emerging from a dusting of late winter snow, that is the moment this entire planting list pays off. Every plant you put in the ground this May, every Saturday investment you made leads to that quiet morning moment. That is what you planted for. Every plant on this list could technically be purchased and planted in June, in July, or even later. So why does May matter so specifically? Why is this video called Plant These Now and not Plant These Whenever You Have a Free Weekend? Because of what happens underground in May before you see anything happening above ground. In May, soil temperatures across most American growing zones sit between 55 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the precise biological window where perennial root systems establish fastest, grow most efficiently, and develop the deep anchoring structure they need to survive their first summer. Plant in that window, and roots have 8 to 10 full weeks to establish before the peak summer heat arrives, and 8 to 10 weeks of cool, moist, low-stress establishment that builds resilience into the plant at its foundational level. Miss that window, plant in late June or July, and those same roots are trying to establish in hot, dry, stressed soil while simultaneously supporting a plant that is already trying to grow and bloom above ground. The energy demand splits. The establishment slows. The plant might survive, but it will not thrive, not in that first season. And first season establishment determines everything about long-term performance. Every plant you put in the ground this May will bloom more profusely, spread more aggressively, and live longer than the identical plant put in the ground 6 weeks later. May is not a preference. It is a biological window with a closing date, and that window is open right now. Before you plant a single thing, 3 rules determine whether everything you do this May succeeds or struggles. Most gardening content skips all 3 of them entirely. Rule 1. Test drainage before you plant anything. Poor drainage kills more perennials than drought, cold, pests, and neglect combined. Dig a hole 1 foot deep. Fill it completely with water. If that water has not fully drained within 1 hour, you have a drainage problem that will undermine every plant on this list. Fix it with coarse sand and compost, work deeply into the existing soil, or build a raised bed above the problem area. Do this once, do it right. It permanently changes what your soil can support. Rule 2. Division is free money. Every plant on this list can be divided. Most should be divided every 3 to 4 years to maintain peak vigor. Every division is a complete, fully viable, blooming new plant that costs you absolutely nothing beyond 30 minutes with a shovel. At current nursery prices, $10 to $20 per perennial, one mature established clump yields $50 to $150 worth of free plants. You should never buy a plant twice that is already growing in your yard. Rule 3. Leave the seed heads standing through winter. Every fall, the instinct is to cut everything down and clean the beds up. Resist it. The seed heads you cut down are the food source goldfinches, sparrows, and chickadees depend on through the coldest months of the year. They are also the natural reseeding mechanism that multiplies your plants for free while the ground is frozen. Leave them standing. Your garden will be more alive, more ecologically connected, and more abundant in spring, and you will do less work in the process. You just spent 35 minutes learning 11 plants that will change what your yard looks and feels like by July, and keep changing it, keep improving it, keep expanding for years and years from now, without you having to start over every single spring. That is not just a video. That is a real, specific, actionable plan for a yard that genuinely takes care of itself. If even one plant on this list is going into the ground at your house this May, subscribe right now. Because next week we go just as deep on a different topic, and the week after that, and the week after that. Real plant knowledge, real zone-specific guidance, real information that saves you money, saves you time, and changes how your outdoor space performs. Heuchera, you do not want to be the gardener who finds this channel 6 months from now and wishes they had subscribed today. The gardeners who subscribed at the beginning of this video are already ahead. Join them right now. Drop one comment below before you go. Tell me which plant from this list you are putting in the ground first, and tell me what state or zone you're gardening in. I read every single comment, and your answer directly shapes what I cover next. This is your yard. This is your May. The window is open right now. Go plant something.